Hi, I'm Carmen Sid. I'm the Dean of Arts and Sciences here at Eastern Connecticut State University, and I'm welcoming you to our third Eastern Fellows panel discussion, and this one is entitled Multiple Pathways to Successful Careers. And let me tell you that as I have been a faculty member here for 23 years, and now I'm the Dean of Arts and Sciences for 6 years, and there's no greater pleasure for faculty or for staff or administrators than to welcome back successful graduates, because all of us feel that we had just a little bit of an influence in their career development. And so all of the alumni we have here today, we have 3, and I'll introduce them in a second, have been recognized for their leadership, their creativity, their intelligence, and their hard work. And the one thing that they do have in common with you students in the audience is that they all did internships, and they were required internships in order to graduate. So think about what that internship can get you in the right path for. Now we have on the far end of the table, we have Paul Provost, who graduated in '97 with a bachelor's in political science, and he is the president and publisher of the Norwich Bulletin newspaper. And then in the middle we have Rob Nieto, who graduated in '96, and he is an award-winning producer from the nightly CBS TV show Inside Edition. And closest to me is Carol Pandiscia, also graduated from communications, and she's the Senior Vice President for Technology, Program Management, and Business Planning at ESPN. So they're going to get 15 minutes each. We'll try to move them along here. But very important, we sent him some questions. We want him to address topics that are directly related to you. And these are the 5 topics. First, we want him to discuss their career path after graduating from Eastern. Very long career paths there. We want him to indicate any mentors from Eastern who played significant roles in their career and success. And all of us didn't get anywhere today without people supporting us. For example, Paul Provost's parents are in the audience. So that's the first level of support. We want him to also discuss the advantages of graduating from a public liberal arts college, particularly in this type of economy. Also, we want him to talk about current challenges and opportunities for graduates looking for work in their particular fields. And lastly, to give you the type of career advice they wish they would have had when they were here at Eastern. So I won't take up any more time. Who wants to go first?
I'll start.
Okay, Paul will start. Okay, Paul Provost.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the Department of Institutional Advancement for suggesting my name, and it's very much appreciated. This has been a fantastic day. It started out with spending some time in a classroom with the students, which I really enjoyed, and just recently we had lunch with the faculty, or some of the faculty. But I often struggle at the very beginning of talks to try to find something clever to say. Well, my son last night gave me a gift. I was talking through some of the topics, and he said, "Would you mind mentioning me in your talk?" So that's done. Zachary is his name, and he said, "Would you also mention me before you mention all my other brothers?" He's one of 3. "And if you don't mind, and if you have time, could you mention the dog Zoe too?" So I've accomplished that for him. So it truly is impressive to come back to Eastern. The new classroom building was the newest building when I was here. I think it's called Webb Hall now, and there's so many newer buildings associated with this campus, and you're all very lucky and chose wisely. This is an unbelievable institution that taught me an awful lot, and I call on this education and the experience that I had here very often. And some of those professors that we were asked to talk about. One in particular immediately came to mind because the luncheon that I just came from as a student here, he invited me to participate in, and that was Dr. Vasilopoulos, who's still here, and I'm thankful to hear that he is still here. And I hope to bump into him before my day ends today. But he asked me to join him at a luncheon to meet Israel Shahak, who was introduced as one of the most influential and intelligent men in the world. And I looked around and I saw faculty members and people at the top of their field, and me, and a couple of other students. And I said, what am I doing here? Well, 14 years later, I look back and say, he was teaching me something, that it doesn't matter where you are in your career, it's your obligation to influence the next generation and to expose them to things that they may not ordinarily have the opportunity to be exposed to. And I call on that very often, and I just want to thank him for that experience. But Dr. Parzik was another. Dr. Parzik spent an awful lot of time in the gym with me after the class that I would participate in. But what he taught me was to have passion for what you do and love what you do. And I've never seen a professor work a lecture hall like Dr. Parzik used to with excitement. And you truly understood that this man loved what he did. And to find that passion in what you do was a great lesson for me, and I found it. It took me a while, but I found it, and I've worked at the newspaper for 11 years now. That path was meandering, and I'm sure many of yours will be as well. It started out, I was a political science major. It started out in politics. I spent 3.5 years as a political consultant, and 7 days a week and 16-hour days, having my first son, I realized I wasn't going to be able to do that forever. So I wanted my evenings and my weekends off, so I got my real estate license. Now, you said intelligence. That doesn't display it, because it was weekends, evenings, and long hours. So my wife, who's a pretty intelligent woman, said, why don't you try to find something that you can wrap your arms around and move your way up? So I landed at the Bulletin as a sales rep, and after 6 months I was promoted to the retail advertising manager position. That's when I realized this is what I wanted to do. The Bulletin was a stopover for me until I figured out what it was I wanted to do. But when I got that management position, I realized it was absolutely what I wanted to be involved in. It was exciting to me. I was okay at sales. I was a better manager. And so after 5 years, I moved to Poughkeepsie and then came back to the Bulletin. And after a year, I was nominated and actually received an award from Press Time magazine as one of the top 20, as one of the top 20 newspaper executives in the entire country under the age of 40, which is a huge honor for me personally, but also for the newspaper. And it's the first time it's ever happened, and it hasn't happened since. So it's experiences, it's awards, but it's finding the passion and the excitement for what you do. I learned a lot of that through my education here at Eastern, the professors along the way. But if there's something that I can leave you with today, it is just 2 words, because I have a difficult time finding it when I interview, and that is work ethic. You can't teach it in a classroom. You have it or you don't. And if you can find it, bring it. I learned it from my father, who's here today, and I thank him very much for coming, as well as my mom. They taught me what it's like to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and go provide for your family and work as hard as you can for whatever it is you believe in, and have that passion, but to provide. And so I have 3 kids, a wife, a house, a lot of responsibility, and I bring that passion for what I do on a daily basis, every single day, and it drives me. So I'm not saying, go on vacation and think about your job like I do, because that gets me in a lot of trouble. Don't do that. But don't wake up in the morning and roll yourself to whatever it is you're going to do. Enjoy it. Find something that you like to do, enjoy it, love it, embrace it, because you'll be the best at it that you can possibly be. So I want to thank you all very much for your attention, for coming today, listening to us talk. I want to thank my colleagues for sharing the stage with me today, and the faculty and staff here for really making us feel welcome. Thank you all very much.
And we're going to hold off on questions until all three are finished. And we have 2 mics here, so we're recording this program today so that others can enjoy it who may be, off campus and doing other things. Some of them are doing internships today. So we'll continue with Rob Nieto, who's in the middle here, graduated from communications. Okay, Rob.
Thank you, Carmen. And thank you, Paul and Carol, for being up here with me today. And thank you to the Department of Institutional Advancement for setting up what has been a wonderful day for us. I came to Eastern about 15 years ago to start my career, and I turned the corner this morning and I didn't know where I was. For those of you who are attending Eastern, in this millennia, it's a wonderful campus. It was a wonderful campus 15 years ago when I came here for a host of different reasons, but now you get the full package. I mean, look at this place. It's like at the cathedral. It's wonderful. Soak it up. Again, I'd like to thank President Nunez and Dr. Gomez and Ken DeLisa, everyone who's been a wonderful host today, for inviting us here. I was here 2 years ago, and I spoke to the faculty and the staff and the students here at Eastern. And surprisingly, you all invited me back, so I guess I must have done something right. So, the last time I came, I had a little speech I prepared in front of my 2 daughters. They were 3 and 5 at the time. They were 7 and 9. So much shorter attention span this time around, and I had to bribe them with ring-dings and yodels. That lasted about 10 minutes, and they were out of the room. So, pardon me. If I go on too long, just let me know. But as I said, it's been 15 years since I left Eastern, and a lot, like I said, has changed since then. But before I started at Eastern, I took a very unorthodox or unnatural route to get here. I was a sailor, a submarine sailor, right down the road in Groton, Connecticut for almost 10 years of my life, right out of high school. And it was near the end of my tour duty, and I decided to really, it wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. I wanted a different career path. I wanted to move forward and try something else. So I took all the years of nuclear Navy experience and all the, tens of thousands of dollars I'd poured into my education as a acoustical engineer, and what did I want to do? I wanted to be a veterinarian. Why? Go figure. I have no idea why. But at the time, I really liked animals. I really wanted to work with animals, and it just seemed like the right career path. Needless to say, it took coming to Eastern to really figure out what I wanted to do with my life, which is one of the most wonderful things about being here. But at the time when I got out, I applied to numerous schools around the country, Michigan State, Iowa State, Oregon State, pretty much anything with a state at the end of it I applied to. And on that list was also, the only 2 that didn't have state were University of Connecticut and Auburn. By the time I applied to all these schools, I didn't have enough money to send Auburn an application certificate, or their app fee, so I didn't get into Auburn, obviously. They wanted the $25. But luckily I got into schools, 10 different schools around the country, and on that radar, on that list, was Eastern. Here in the state of Connecticut at the time, when we were, Paul, we discussed this morning, there was a very generous program that was offered by the state that if you were a veteran of Desert Shield / Desert Storm at the time, your tuition was waived at a state school. So at that point, that kind of narrowed down my choices rather quickly. And at the time, I had gotten into UConn and Eastern. Visited the UConn campus. It was wonderful. They were very warm, very accepting, very, it was a whirlwind day there. And I really got a feel of what it was like to be on the campus. and then I came to Eastern. Needless to say, by the end of the day, I'd already made my decision that this is where I wanted to be. This is where I wanted to, finish my academic career and move on with my life. And there was a fair number of reasons, why I wanted to do that. And, not having a Division I basketball team, fine, that could have kind of steered me the other way. But what really made the difference for me was what it was like to be on the Eastern campus, what the experience was like. I made the analogy earlier in the day where we were discussing what the student to faculty ratio is in some of these universities around the country. And like I said, I have a 5 and a 7-year-old. I have a kindergartner and a first grader. And a comparable class size, if you're lucky, is 20, 25 students, into a class. Now, if you ever try to watch 25 kindergartners, it's like herding cats. It's not very easy to do. But to hear that Eastern has, a comparable level, you're not, of 20 to 25 students in a class, on average, mind-boggling. Especially when you consider some state schools around the country can have 400 to 450 students in an auditorium, trying to basically soak up as much information as they can. So that in and of itself is just phenomenal to me. And I commend the faculty and the staff and everyone here for being able to keep that experience. And that hasn't changed in the 15 years that I've been here. The one-on-one attention that you get. If I had to really wrap my arms around, a defining moment or an experience I had here at Eastern that set the wheels in motion for me in my career, I'd have to think back to two, teachers that really made a difference for me. One of which we sat in a classroom this morning, Terry Toles-Patkin, who was phenomenal, made a big dent in my life. Whether she realizes it or not, she really kind of put me on the right road to where I needed to be today. And at the time, when I first started here, the first 6 months I was here, I got to work at the TV station, WECS, and the radio station, WECS, the radio station, and ECTV 16, was it? The TV station, as the news director. I mean, here I am 6 months into my experience at Eastern, and I'm already working at a TV station and a radio station. If you want to go to Syracuse, if you want to go to one of the major universities around the country with a great communication or journalism program, you're not going to touch any of these things until, if you're lucky, until your junior year, senior year in college. You can't buy that experience. And that, for me, it went a long way. The longer I stayed here at Eastern, the more I realized that I was learning things, I was taking things with me that I was going to be able to use later on in life. And as I left here, I started my first internship, which the school set up for me at CNBC. I remember there's one defining moment, or one moment, as I like to call, $1 million moment, where I was sitting with a group of interns, probably about this size, from schools all over the country. And the head of programming walked in to give his speech to the interns that were showing up for their indoctrination. And he was going around the room and he was talking, asking specific questions, and of course, we're all sitting there just stone-faced because this guy could make or break our internship, let alone the rest of our career. And he started telling a story about the TV show. How many people remember Gunsmoke? On older people, raise your hands. Come on, let's go. I'm 45, I know Gunsmoke. So he starts telling a story about Gunsmoke, which at the time when it was on the air was the most widely watched TV show out there. It was #1 in the ratings every week. But at the height of its time on TV, it got canceled. And here, first of all, half the audience, you lost them on Gunsmoke. So the other half of the audience is trying to figure out, well, why did this thing get taken off the air? So, and what you learn later on is what you never do is you shotgun somebody the question. The president of programming looks at me and points at me, you, why did it go off the air? And I just shot back to him. They couldn't sell it. How did I know that information? John Zatowski. He's in the middle of his classroom. He just happened to be looking at the board that day, having that same discussion. And I was able to take that little bit of information with me. And that was the whole thing, that, that little defining moment, there were, I can't tell you the number of times I had $1 million moments like that in my television career, where I would always reach back to something that I learned at Eastern and take it with, and take it with me. And, I can't tell you how many times this school has bailed my butt out, so that was just one moment. But my current job, I've been at Inside Edition now as a producer for about 10 years in different capacities. I started out at the investigative unit there. I was as an associate producer, which was a mind-boggling experience. Working with hidden cameras, working, to basically right the wrongs, the many injustices that you see nowadays. Unfortunately, the state of investigative journalism has taken a different turn in the last 10 years. I guess a lot of it has to do with priorities and programming. But at the time, it was kind of like being at the height of the Cold War. I was right in the mix of it, right in the middle of it. And we got to do some pretty impressive investigations. The great thing about being there, it's the same as the great thing about being at Eastern, is you get to move up within the company. And I moved up from being an associate producer there to be a producer. Now I'm a senior producer producing the opening segment of the show every day. And being mindful of what, Eastern brought to the table. I think back to all the times that I had to come up with a script or in a writing class, run it to our weekend news segment, and then rip this thing apart, push it through the teleprompter, and get it on the air, because I know not only did I have a class in an hour, but I had to go to work an hour and a half after that. So talk about multitasking and those types of skills. I can't tell you enough how important it was being part of the Eastern experience for that reason. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the challenges that we're facing here. I want to say 2 years ago when I first came here to talk to students, we were in the middle of pretty much an upheaval in the broadcasting industry, and especially in the publishing industries and in television. That hasn't changed much. It's starting. It looks like we're turning the corner a little bit, but the field in and of itself seems to have collapsed in on itself with the internet, social networking. It seems like everywhere you go, people are going to different places to get their news. That said, one of the things that I wish I would have been told when I was here was to make the most of my internships, which I did. I went to CNBC, got a great internship while I was here at Eastern, but I wish I would have taken a second one or tried out a different field. Let's just say the field of publishing, or maybe journalism, at a newspaper, or something to that extent. Because once you get out there, once you get out in the workforce, it's going to be able to enhance your marketability, and your networking skills are going to definitely come into play as well. And one of the great things I like that what we've done here is set up through some of the personnel here at the school is through the social networking site LinkedIn. We have a fair number of alumni that belong to that network, and right now I think there's over 750 current and former alumni that are part of that network. But I can go on and on how important Eastern has been to me, and have been to my career and what it's meant to me. But I see it every day when I look, when I walked into the classroom this morning, and when Carol and I were speaking to the students there, you see it in the faces of the students. I mean, you guys are really getting a top flight education here. It's, having traveled across the country, for a dozen years, and going to different schools, speaking to, to small groups, and then just, collectively having the experience of seeing what's out there. It's nice when you come back here and you see, that the interpersonal experience hasn't changed here. There's still a very tight, knit community. There's a bond between students and faculty, which you don't see elsewhere around the country. But I can go on and on about how much I love this school and what it's meant to be, but I'd like to turn it over to Carol.
We want to leave time for the questions, which is the most important part, is your experiences, asking them how their experiences can help you. So here we go with Carol from
Yep.
ESPN.
Before I start, I would just like to acknowledge these two gentlemen in the service to our country. If you guys would thank you for service to our country. How many people here are fans of ESPN? We have people in the, great. When I came back to this campus today, it reminds me of the growth that ESPN has had. I mean, we have 13 new, buildings that are now there, and it's remarkable. My career at ESPN has kind of been watching that place grow, and as I came back here, I get to see the growth that exploded as well. So thank you for having me today. So I've been with ESPN for 21 years, coming up this April. I started right out of college, started in an entry-level position, basically running tapes, doing anything that they'd let me get my hands on. I became a sponge. First and foremost, I really did that job well, and I took the opportunities on nights and weekends to just take in anything I could. I'd sit in a control room. I would help write a script if they'd let me. I found that people were extremely willing to talk about what they did. And teach you. And it's something that I've taken with me along my journey in my career path. I certainly was at ESPN when it started. When I was there was two networks, an international network, which is in our Latin America space, and our ESPN network. So I was there during explosive, big growth years. And so I have to say that my career path was certainly strung with a lot of hard work, a lot of deliverables, and certainly some timing and some luck, all factored into that. And I think that's going to play probably a little bit in everybody's careers as they go. But the thing that I think was a differentiator for me was really the focus that I put on people and the leadership component of working in an organization. Similarly to Paul, I found that management of people, getting people to see things in themselves that they hadn't seen yet, was a really exciting path for me. And I do believe that that's been the differentiator for me at ESPN. Currently, I work in the technology organization at ESPN, and at ESPN, we've merged our IT and our broadcast engineering and our new media technologies and our innovation office into one full group. That was done back in 2006. The idea that you can't build a control room anymore without IT, and you can't run a network, an administrative network and a broadcast network without broadcast engineering. So we've merged the two groups, and an opportunity presented itself in a new job overseeing their program and project management office, and that is the job that I sit in today. So I left an operational group with really very little technology experience, if any. And it was really built on the leadership skills that I had demonstrated and the teams that I had built to transfer over. So I guess the message there is something that I took away from Eastern was, in this liberal arts education, was I became a generalist. I took a lot away from everything, all the opportunities I had here in class and the experiences on the community. And I did the same thing in my career life. I just tried to pull from every experience, which helped me transfer into a job that really, some would probably say maybe I wasn't qualified for, but because of the leadership component, I was able to go in and do. So it was, again, a little bit of luck, a little bit of timing, and certainly the hard work. But the two things that we do in technology at ESPN is we serve our customers. Our internal customers. We've got 7,000 people that work at ESPN across the world, and we serve our fans. And those two things really make up the bulk of what we do in my organization. We actually really spend a lot of time with our business groups and try to make sure that the technology that we're thinking about meets their business needs. So we're aligning our roadmaps to the needs that they have for us as a company to be successful, to be a leader in the marketplace, to continue to grow globally. I think the challenge for us and for people coming into the workforce is that technology is changing so much how we run our business and what our distribution models for our content are. And we are a content provider. So us and technology are disrupting our own business model. And the technology is changing so fast that you get a product done and it's old already before people can actually use it. So it's there's been some challenges. So as I think about you guys entering the workforce, that ability to be agile and that ability to really think about what's coming. You know, you're in school now and you're probably saying, my God, I can't wait till I'm out of here. But I'm telling you, you're gonna be in school forever. At least that's how I feel. I go home at night with, you know, the newspaper, I go home with the trades, I go home with the iPad, and I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly becoming a student of the business. And it's critical. And you have to stay current, you have to stay relevant. So I guess I make that analogy to the generalist. I try to be, I'm probably a master of nothing, but a jack of all trades is kind of what I've become. And in the world that I'm in, and the career that I'm in, that works for me. So it's been a great ride. I work for an incredible company, one that's grown consistently. We did go through a bump in the road a couple of years ago, more because we were trying to make sure that the resources that we had were aligned to the work we needed to get done, more so than trying to hit the bottom line. So I have been extremely lucky, and I'm at a point, in my career where it's always about other people. It's about giving back, and it's about making someone's road a little bit maybe easier than they have it at the moment, and getting folks to see what they don't see. I think one of the pieces of career advice that I wish I had gotten was that this is a marathon and it's not a sprint. Your life will change. I'm sure you've already, changed from when you were in middle school and high school, so you know what I'm talking about. But as you get older and you make decisions in life, you have a family, you don't have a family, your work and your life merges, and technology is making that better in some ways, and I think it's making it tougher in some ways. So I think you're always going to try to, be true to who you are, try to figure out what it is you want to do, love it, bring the passion, bring the energy, because it makes all the difference in the world. How you show up is going to be as much of a factor as what you do. At least that's been my experience to date. So, thank you.
So you've heard about all the many different ways in which the three alumni have gotten ahead in their careers and have found the career that they really love to do. And the fact that all of them started learning, hands-on learning here at Eastern, and have put that learning to work in many different aspects of their life later on. And also the fact that you're not necessarily an expert in the career that you end up at, that you find your way and you're learning every day. So there's a lot of information that they've provided, but there are many questions that you have, and what I want you to do is step up to the mic, and anything you have out there, throw it out to the alumni here who are just dying to answer your questions.
There are a number of students here from my business ethics class. And so I wondered if all three of you are in the communication business, which in large part is about communicating the truth as well as entertaining. And I wonder if each of you could say something about the ethical challenges you've encountered, or a particular ethical dilemma that you had to struggle with in carrying through your professional responsibilities. Thank you.
I come from the business side of the newspaper, not the journalism side. I'm a marketer. I'm an advertising guy. The balance between telling the news, reporting the news, and being part of the news has been a learning experience for me. We don't want to be the news. We want to just report it. I want to be the news as much as I possibly can be, and promote the product. And so that's the balance that I've had to learn from the newspaper side and from what I do.
Just expanding on what Paul said, and I agree with you 100%. There is a balance. It's a very delicate, fine line that you do not want to cross. And I guess the most bizarre analogy I can make: how many Star Trek fans are out there? Come on. All right, one. Okay. In Star Trek, there was something called the Prime Directive. Whenever you landed on a planet, no matter what you did, you didn't want to disturb anything. It's kind of like the butterfly effect. One little thing can change everything. I look at it when you walk into a news story at any given point. You don't want to become part of that story. You want to distance yourself from that story. You want to report at what's out there. You don't want to add any influence, to what can already be a very complex situation, whether it be a political story, whether it be an investigation on a business that might have some, very serious ethical issues involved. It could be instances where a serious crime was committed, and you're asked to look at specific, facts in the case. And if you're doing your reporting, you're being asked, to do it from both sides, from the person who's being, let's just say, accused of a crime, and plus the person who's, the accuser. It's a very, very delicate line. You're soaking in the information, and hopefully the more experience you get, you're able to disseminate, you're not supposed to be the truth sayer, but you're supposed to be the person who gets the information out and lets the public decide. But for me, that's the biggest challenge I've faced. Because 99% of the time, especially if you're reporting on breaking news, you're getting a lot of facts thrown at you. You're getting a lot of details thrust forward, and you have to be able to filter out what's the truth. And and especially as you learn in some of your classes, you don't want to slander somebody. You don't want, or depending on the medium, libel. But there's definitely a fine line.
For me, I think that we've all learned growing up that, do the right thing. And you find in business that doing the right thing is hard sometimes, because you have a lot of influencing factors on you. But that principle is just so sound, do the right thing. And I think sometimes for some things that I've experienced is that some of the most damaging things are not the most obvious things. So, for example, the way we treat each other, right? I mean, if you're going to make someone a scapegoat, or you're going to sabotage a team, or you're going to kind of guard your turf, that happens. I mean, that's part of, the world. And to me, those can be the most damaging, and those are the hardest ones to I think, work through. Because when you do stuff like that, you're the culture, you're really affecting the culture and the way people work. So some of the experiences I have had have really been trying to do the right thing around getting that ecosystem back in order. And it takes a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to do that. It's a little bit different angle than these guys, but I still think important, because we all go to work every day, and I think everybody wants to go and do the right thing. Sometimes it gets muddied.
In
Mr.
your
Bachman.
professional opinion, could each of you just briefly tell me if you think Fox News is fair and balanced, which is their marketing? They have an anchor person who actually refers to the President of the United States every time he opens his mouth as the anointed one, and I'm just curious.
Those are opinions, and we're not in the opinion business, with the exception of the editorial board. We take positions on various events. There's an argument to be made that Fox is right to CNN's left. Is there a balance? They're a news organization covering news and hopefully without an opinion. They have personalities that are definitely very upfront about where their position is. But I think there's an hour or so on Fox News that I happen to watch to report the news. All of the other stuff is programming around what Fox's position is, and that is a little bit more to the right. CNN reports the news. CNN became very well known for the first Gulf War, I think, for having embedded journalists on the ground, Bernard Shaw on the rooftop as bombs are hitting downtown Baghdad. I was in the Army during that time, watching the war happen, getting information about what was going on, but also watching it on television, which brought the news to us in a very, very different way. Some have said CNN is a little bit more left. I watch the news. I'm a news guy. I'm a news junkie. I try to watch it from both sides, from a political side, get a sense of what Fox is saying, get a sense of what everybody else is saying, because they do tend to be a little bit more right. But it's preference and opinion, I think.
I think Paul brings up an excellent point, and I agree with you. I mean, to be in the business, you almost have to be a news junkie. And whether you're getting news from Fox, whether you're getting news from CNN, whether you're getting news from MSNBC, I think you have to take all of it as a whole and process it and listen to what, these anchors are telling you. A lot of it is theater. A lot of I don't have to tell you that. A lot of it is theater. A lot of it is they're serving an audience, and they're not going to serve their particular audience if they're addressing a certain, politician a certain way, or if they're or a political activist a certain way. If they're not attacking somebody or going somebody, to their audience's liking, they're probably not going to get the ratings that they're looking for. That said, I think these days, and especially being a news junkie, you have to watch what's being, put out there, not only just on TV, but also on the web. And I hate to say it, a lot of these, folks that are now writing on blogs, a lot of information is being pumped out there. You have to almost be your own self-censor, filter yourself, look at it all as a whole, and then, like I said, make your own decisions based on what they're saying. But like I said, a lot of it is they're serving a market. They're making these comments or these aspersions a lot of times just so other organizations or their rivals will report on them. So I hope that answered your question.
I don't really watch Fox News at all, but I agree wholeheartedly with what he just said, because I'm not sure watching one of those networks you actually get the news. I think you have to have a filter, and you have to watch a lot and figure it out from there.
Oddly enough, I think one of the biggest filters right now is if you watch The Daily Show or something like that, which puts a comedic spin on what all these organizations, left and right, are saying. And oddly enough, a fair amount of Americans are getting their news, oddly enough, from Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert, because they're taking what's out there, what's being written, what's being said, and channeling it in a way where you can make an informed decision. Granted, some of it is tongue-in-cheek, but basically it's thought-provoking. It gets people talking. It's water cooler journalism. It's the type of thing that you want people to, if Paul and I are talking about it, then they've done their point. If Carol and I are bringing it up in conversation, then it's the type of discussion, it's the type of dialogue we should be getting into. But throwing names out there or doing that type of thing, to me, is not journalism.
I wonder how many of you are seniors out there. Okay, so there's a fair number of seniors. And how many are juniors? Okay. As I listened to the three of them, my first thing is, what if I were a junior? I didn't figure out even what I wanted to do after graduation until the end of my junior year. And then I had to come up with a lot of courses that I needed to take in the right direction, so to speak. So I wondered, if you're a senior, if you're a junior, if we can get advice on what should you be doing now, what could you be doing now, given what we have available at Eastern from their experience, so that, you know, you can get on the right track by the time you graduate.
I'm still trying to figure it out. I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. It was twists and turns. I thought I knew what I wanted to do. I was so mature when I was a senior. I was 25, 26 years old because I had spent time in the Army. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go to law school. I got accepted to law school and was married and had my first child, and looked at my wife and said, all right, I'm in. She goes, you don't look very happy. I said, well, I have to make a choice. And that choice is I go to law school and don't get to see him grow up for the next 3 years, or I don't. And I chose not to. I never, ever would have thought I'd be in the newspaper publishing business. I found something that I loved and have passion for. So, junior, senior, if you've got it figured out now, good for you. You are so much further ahead than where I was at the time where I was a junior or senior. It's passion. It's find what you love and go do it.
Oh. I think if you can take advantage of creating a network, whether it's something like today or it's an opportunity to volunteer in a public radio station or a public television station, it depends on where you want to go. If you want to be in PR, there's a ton of nonprofits that are looking for people to help, to roll up their sleeves. That kind of stuff, and I know it's hard because everybody's got a lot on their plates and it takes time, and time seems to be our killer these days. But those are things that as I look back, I wish I took more time to do. I ended up working, which was great because I got experience, but I didn't necessarily work in the field that I was thinking about getting into. And if I had done that, I think it could have helped a little bit. So those would be things I would think about in addition to your core courses that you're taking.
I think in my experience, I'm speaking for myself, is one of the, once I had an idea of what I wanted to do, and that basically took one radio course here at the school, and then expand upon that one TV course, I was hooked. I wanted to make the most of my career choice, and for me, that meant getting as much experience as I could, and if that meant answering an ad in the Norwich Bulletin for someone who wanted to read the headlines to a very, very tiny network of blind individuals who basically couldn't read the daily newspaper for themselves, I did that. I stood in front of a microphone at Thames Valley, and I think I'd have to get up at the time I was working overnights, so I'd get off work at 7 in the morning. By 7:30, groggy and all, I'd have the Norwich Bulletin in my lap, and I'd be reading it to a core audience of probably 200 people for an hour. And if you ever tried to just read a newspaper out loud, not a very easy thing to do, because you're basically scanning, and then you gotta go, all they're hearing is paper shuffling as you're going to, oh my God, and then, luckily you have somebody with you next to you that's helping you out. But those are the things you do. Working within the campus community, like Carol said, networking with people, trying to get as much experience as you can in the field that you want to do is paramount. I can't tell you how important it was for me, especially my first internship, to meet friends and to meet coworkers that to this day, 15 years later in my career, I deal with almost on a daily basis. They're just, you form this core group of people that'll help you not only where you are at that moment, but later on in life. And then, and it's not just career-wise, in important life decisions too. I spoke when I spoke to the faculty this morning, and when I spoke to the students this morning, I had my first executive producer made a very profound impression upon me as the type of manager I wanted to be. He was the type of person that would surround himself to what he called triple threat people, which means people that can do his job 3 times over. It wasn't about being cutthroat. It wasn't about looking out for number one. It was about basically surrounding yourself with a core group of people that you trusted, and then you knew that can do your job 3 times over, and that would basically boost and elevate yourself up and boost and eventually the product up, which for us was getting a nightly news show on the air. Wouldn't have had that experience had I not, networked or interacted with people or, chose to, utilize the skills I learned here at Eastern in networking. But that, for me, made the biggest difference.
I also think, too, I mean, in this day and age of technology and the stuff that you can do in the palm of your hand with an iPhone or an iPad or video downloads that you can do, and you can do editing. I don't know if some of you are in that space, but basically you can post it anywhere. I mean, you can be found by anybody. So it depends, again, what area you're in, but use technology to your advantage as well as you're thinking about other ways to prepare yourself past Eastern.
And we talked about it a little bit. You have an opportunity right now as juniors and seniors to test it out. Give it a shot in the real world to see if you like it. Go do an internship in your junior year. Make sure you do one in your senior year. To see if you like what you think you want to do, there's an opportunity to get some credit doing it and get some real life experience in an organization that's going to, if it's done properly, give you a real sense of what that job is like.
And if the jobs aren't out there, I mean, I kind of wish I had the opportunity, 15 years ago, to set up my own blog or set up my own website. I have friends of mine now that, at the time, they couldn't get a job or they couldn't, dig their way into the market. So you know what? They created a market in and of itself. They found a niche group, whether it's writing about, something that they have a passion for, whether it be music, whether it be sports. Go out and cover it. It's a good way to build up a resume. It's a good way to build up, and especially in the broadcasting industry, clips. I have a friend now who started doing that, started writing his own music blog, and now he, writes on, all over the country. You'll see some of his features on the Huffington Post. You'll see some of his features on the Spectator, which, in England. Then he's living the dream. He's interviewing, he's going out to concerts and basically being, brought all over the country to write about music, which is his passion. And this isn't something, this is something he started working on in college, but since that opportunity wasn't out there to write for Rolling Stone or write for Spin or to write for CMJ or any of these places he wanted to work for, he's like, well, I'm not going to sit around and wait for it. I'm going to go to it. So, I mean, if that's the type of thing that you're into, if that's the type of thing that you're interested in, the opportunities are out there.
There's one thing that I need some advice on, and I think these people are particularly good at. We're always trying to build teams, engage people in our team to do a certain job. The jobs that they have require that several other people be doing the right thing at the same time, and there's always a deadline that needs to be met, and you can't actually do it all yourself. You have to rely on these other people. So if you have a good team, things get done well. If you don't have a good team, things don't get done. So if you have any advice, and that's the same job for a dean, you have to have a good team in order to get things accomplished. So any advice on team building, finding the team, getting the team motivated would be useful for all of us.
All right, so we're a newspaper. We have a finance department, an IT department, a marketing sales department, an editorial department. There are department heads associated with each of them. Any sports fans in here? I see a Yankee hat. Yeah, okay, good. Football, Patriots, anybody Patriot? Okay. Bill Belichick, one of the best coaches in the NFL. I'm not a Patriots fan, but he has built a team of coaches. He doesn't do it himself. He has a team of people that he has assembled to produce some of the best defensive players that are not the highest paid players, but as a team, the philosophy, the strategy is in place for success. And that's what we have attempted to do in my organization. To be the best in Eastern Connecticut, you have to develop a team that understands what the strategy is, what the game plan is, and how you're going to get there. And you know, it doesn't happen immediately, automatically, or with the people that are currently in place. It requires the work to happen, the vision, and the strategy to be put in place in order to get that team. Once it's in place, you have almost undefeated seasons.
Go Giants.
Go Cowboys.
I think deadlines, especially in my business and the broadcast business, are paramount. I work on a daily show, and I've worked on a number of daily shows. That whether you're producing 30 minutes of programming or 2 hours of live TV, you need to make your deadlines. You know, you can't have an anchor sitting in front of a teleprompter, you know, with nothing to read. You can't have a host standing in front of a national audience waiting for a piece to roll about, you know, the tsunami that just hit the, you know, Japan, and not have videotape rolling behind her. I mean, if the deadlines aren't met, then it's just, it is literally another tsunami that's gonna hit you. And I guess the best analogy I can make is, and if you, afterwards I'll speak with you, but there's a newscast that aired nationally recently, and it's, you know, at least, you know, in our business, it's something that gets passed around quite a bit, and it was the first 10 seconds of a newscast. And in that 10 seconds, which was uploaded to YouTube for everyone to see, at least 15 mistakes were made. And it started from the first mistake, going into the second mistake, going into the third mistake, fourth, fifth. And it was all because, you know, they didn't have the right team in place. The cameraman wasn't focused, the teleprompter wasn't ready, the script was inaccurate. There was a number of things that went wrong, and it all had to do with, for whatever moment, that team collapsed for a moment. If you have the right team in place, magic happens. Incredible things happen. If you don't have the right team in place, then you're just setting yourself up for failure. Like I said, especially in a deadline-driven environment, you live or die by the strength of the people that you're basically putting your trust in. I know I have an assistant that I work with at work, an associate producer that has my back, that when I go to her and say, you know, I need help finding this, I know that if I turn away, she's going to come back and those things are going to be sitting there waiting for me. I have an editor that works for me that I don't know how he does the things he does on a daily basis, but I know that when my deadline, which is 2:40 in the afternoon every day, I'm going to have a piece to put on the air, and it's the first piece in the show. If my show doesn't roll, there's a big my piece doesn't roll at the top of my show, there's a 90-second black hole until Deborah Norville pops up on there and said, well, hey, how's it going today? Not going to happen. I'm not going to be in the job very long if that happens. But like I said, you're only as strong as the members of your teams. Like, and getting back to what I said before, a very important lesson I learned early on was surround yourself with great team members. Somebody who's with you should be able to do your job 3 times over. And as long as you're strong enough and you put your egos aside and you're able to, you know, live with that someone can do your job, you're going to do some incredible things.
I think for me, so much of it comes down to communication. First of all, you have to make sure you know what you are going to accomplish as a team, what's your objective. You need to make sure that you have the roles clear for everybody on the team, and you need to communicate, and communicate some more. So for me, that's how it works, especially the bigger that ESPN gets and the more complex it gets. We're very good at putting SportsCenter on the air every day. It's going to happen. It's just going to be there. But everything else, it's really about clarity of roles and clear objectives and communication.
I know you have questions out there, but you want to keep them to yourself because you don't want to sound stupid, perhaps, which is what all of us have to, since our role is to be up here. So perhaps you can actually catch them right after we finish this formal component. And introduce yourself because, again, networking is what gets you started in this field, in all these fields, including my job. And there's one out there. You can come up front. Step over the...
Hi, my name is Gabriel Gonzalez. I'm a senior here at Eastern Connecticut State University. And my question was, what was, I guess, some of the most important things that you learned through your experience here at Eastern, whether it was in the classroom or just on campus life, that you guys were able to utilize throughout your professional careers?
Thanks for the question. It's a great one. That you only get out of an experience what you put into it. And, you know, in high school, I wasn't a very good student. You know, I got taken off the basketball team my freshman year because my grades weren't there. And, you know, I went into the service shortly after high school because I was fooling around at the community college that I went to. But I knew once I got out of the service that if I didn't get real or get serious, those type of jobs that I was doing in the service, getting paid $500 a month, was what I was going to do for the rest of my life. And that's not what my father and mother taught me. What they taught me was get a job, get yourself out there, and provide for yourself. But if you have a family, you better buckle down and provide for them as well. I could have skated through this university, just like all of you. You could do whatever you want, 2.0 or 4.0. It's up to you. But you get out of it what you put into it. And that experience here, you know, really provided me with what I was going to do in my professional life. It wasn't easy here. You had to work. And if you didn't put the work in, you weren't going to get the grades, and the grades ultimately get you to where you want to be in the professional world. So it was about being serious at a time in my life when I was 23 years old, not the conventional college student. So, so I thank you for your question, and it was about the work for me.
Again, Gabriel, thank you for your question. And it's listening to what Paul had to say. It's almost like we live parallel lives. I mean, out of high school, I was not very focused, and heading into what at the time, which is a smaller school here on the East Coast, for me, it was essentially an extension of something that I just experienced for 4 years. It wasn't necessarily a positive experience for me, my high school experience. It was basically high school with ashtrays at the time. You know, you could smoke in class. But so I felt I needed something with a little bit more discipline, and something that would basically get me to the place where I needed to be in life. So I chose a life in this service, and thank God I selected this one little box that said, would you be interested in submarine service? I just, well, okay. And I was able to, luckily I went into the submarine service because it was an experience that I will carry with me for the rest of my life. And the discipline that I learned, it's really taken me to the, you know, where I needed to be in my career, and more, you know, now, but more importantly, getting out of the Navy I did in the mid to late 90s, I was ready to go to college. I was ready to, you know, apply myself, and I was able to, you know, to focus and harness the things that I needed to do on campus on a daily basis. You know, there were days, of course, where you wanted to goof off, or you wanted to, you know, when your friends are heading down to, you name the hot spot, just fill in the blank here on the campus. Everyone's going to say Blarney's. It's funny. I didn't want to say it. When your friends are heading down to Blarney's, you're like, you know. Luckily, I had lived the life, so I was able to say, okay, well, you know, okay, let me just this one time. And after a while, those experiences become easier and easier. It becomes a lot easier to do. And for me, it was being able to not only communicate with, like, have the rapport with the teachers that I didn't have before, but in high school, sure, there's a different type of dynamic, a different type of relationship. It's very rare that you can connect with a teacher when you're in high school, and especially when you're first starting out in college, you're timid, you don't know what to do or how you're going to, you know, work with someone on a one-on-one basis. The school that I went to when I first got out of high school, well, there were 400 people in an auditorium. There was no connection. There was none of that there. The one thing that helped me here at Eastern was to be able to not only, you know, during, before class or after class, but during class, being able to talk to my instructor. For whatever that lesson was that day, being able to engage them in a conversation during class time that didn't necessarily interrupt the class, too. You had enough time during class to not only get the lesson plan out, but to have one-on-one interaction, which to me just blows my mind, especially when you hear about, you know, my wife went to Villanova, hearing about her experience and the class sizes she went through there. And it's, you know, it's a big school, but it's not that big of a school. But I'm, you know, for me, it was being able to engage with the instructors. That was the thing I really enjoyed most about being here. And I don't know if that answers your question, Gabriel. It's not a yes.
Something that I learned and take away every day is to ask good questions and to really listen to the answers. Pretty basic stuff. I also learned not to take things personally here. I also learned that it's okay to make mistakes. As long as you learn from them, move on from them. Don't make the same mistake again. And be open. You know, be open to feedback in terms of how you're doing and what you could be doing better, and play to your strengths. You know, we all definitely have areas of opportunity. I think that's the new politically correct way to say it, instead of weaknesses. But I also try to lean on, play to your strengths, because they'll help as well. So some basic stuff, but I think they'll help.
And one aspect of your jobs, you're all managers of people. I'm just wondering what style you use. Are you the easygoing guy? Are you the dictator? Do you use groups to help you make your decisions? And also, what you enjoyed being managed, like what kind of manager you liked?
It's a great question. Management style is something you develop. And you can't manage the person to my right the same way you might manage the person behind me. So you have to integrate and understand who you're talking to and who you're dealing with in order to have the style that fits, that's going to get the most out of that person. I worked for Gannett, and Gannett was a brutal management style. And one of the senior vice presidents, regional vice presidents, his name I won't mention, he is retired now, thank God. I have nightmares of him, literally, because he made your life miserable. So is that an environment? I always ask myself, learn from the experience. You didn't like being managed that way, so who in the world would like to be managed that way? So a dictator? No, I'm not. But having expectations and conveying those expectations in the game plan that we talked about, and having people understand where you're trying to take the product or the business or whatever it might be, and being open with your communication, I think fosters a level of participation that you really don't have to say very much. I have 7 direct reports. There's 88 people in my organization, but those department heads that I talked about are the folks that I interact with most. That's my team. And then they have their teams and they have their style to get the most out of their folks. So it's really about open communication for me, but setting very high expectations.
I think the story I like to tell is during my time in the service, I was afforded an opportunity to work in an environment where there was a tremendous amount of stress. I went from working on a 300-foot-long black tube that carried nuclear weapons and having to guard them, having to be basically entrusted with their, having these things in your care 24/7. It's a tremendous amount of pressure that's placed upon you and a tremendous amount of responsibility. That said, I had a manager that I worked for when I first started in television that would almost have me in tears on a nightly basis. And it wasn't because she yelled, it wasn't because she threw stuff, it wasn't because she was mean, it was just because she was unfocused. She didn't, have a management style. It was pretty much crisis management. It's whatever was in front of that person at that moment was I look at it as the goldfish mentality. Whatever's in front of them at that moment, whatever the shiny object, that was what was important. And the second they turned away, oh, wow, look at that. And then they went on and moved there. I swore to myself I would never have that management style. I believe that you don't have to, I'm not a carrot and the stick type person. I don't believe you have to, motivate. I agree with Paul. There are certain people that you motivate, one way, and there are certain people that need to be motivated another way. But I don't believe that motivation necessarily has to be negative in any way. It wasn't the way I was raised. I have a father who worked for 40 plus years in his field and, raised me and my brother and 2 sisters up to be, proud of who we are and proud of how we treat other people, and especially to have a tremendous amount of respect for other people. And thank goodness I'm able to teach that to my children now. I wouldn't want to treat somebody, let alone manage somebody, in a way that I wouldn't want to be treated myself. So when you see, and trust me, there are a number, especially working in the news business, there are a number of managers out there that do yell, scream, or tear their hair out when things aren't going the right way. In my experience, I find in the time that it takes you to do these things, you can communicate effectively on, as Carol said, communication is paramount. You can communicate the idea or thought or whatever you want done for that specific moment more effectively if you just take the time to do it that second, and then you'd be surprised how much further or how much further along you are with that person the next time you need to deal with them in the same capacity. A lot of it for me is, as Carol said, communication, and the most important thing for me is respect, treating, whoever I'm working with or whoever I'm working for with respect.
I would characterize my style as being inclusive and communicative. I tend to kind of go with the principle of what's the worst that can happen. So I try to keep a pretty calm state. I am very much one that lets my folks do what they need to do to deliver. I like to take the obstacles out of their way. I absolutely need them to help me get better, to make decisions. So I absolutely pull them in. I probably share more than I should at times with them. I haven't gotten burned by it yet, though, so I'll keep doing it. And I just really want them to be a part of the process. Just
to add, I don't mean to, give you homework, but if you're ever looking for a book to read on that particular topic, Good to Great is a book that talks about management style and getting people to do what it is that you're expecting of them without having to motivate them constantly. Because if you have to motivate or you have to constantly beg people to do their job, you have the wrong people. And it's about developing people in an organization to bring it from good to great. It's a great book. And if you want to talk about the brutal dictator, get The Making of McPaper. It's about Al Newharth's rise to power in the Gannett Company and what he did to get there. And it's not a very pretty picture.
You know, in my career, before I moved over to technology, I had a group that was primarily young folks, right out of college, 1 or 2 years in the workplace. And it was a different management style. I still was inclusive, I still was communicative, but there was a lot of coaching and a lot of mentoring. And I still do that today in the group that I'm in, but it's different when it's a younger group. So as we're talking to you guys who are young and who are gonna enter the workforce, it's really important that you come to the table prepared to have, a two-way relationship with your boss. You need to bring it. You need to be very active in that relationship. You should never really think that your boss is going to manage your career for you. You really need to take the responsibility for managing your career. But I do think that just innately, managers probably manage young people differently than maybe they do folks who have been in the workforce longer. So I really think it's, as you go into the workforce, think about, the way in which you'd like to be managed and how you would be best motivated, and have the courage, maybe not on the first day, but to, have that conversation with your boss as you get acclimated to the workplace. And you may be one of those guys that don't want to meet with your boss except for once a month. Now, your boss probably doesn't want to do that, but try to come to a happy medium and make sure that you understand each other, build that relationship, and kind of have that agreement of what works and what will work better for you, and ask them what's going to work for them. I mean, you're really there to kind of make their jobs easier, as much as that may be hard to do. That's my job every day. I got to make my boss look good every day. And that's why we're all here. We're all here to make our bosses look good and make the bottom line look better. So just think about some of those things.
Good question.
Well, I learned a lot from that last question. I'm going home and writing a few things down and getting on Amazon and getting a book. So I'm very, very thankful that all of you came here today to take this time out of your busy job to talk to all of us. And I think they really deserve a big round of applause.